Today is a very interesting anniversary for me. It is 11 years since I had what I then called my awakening. I never quite referred to it as enlightenment, although in a way it was enlightening, and that it truly allowed me to experience life in a less gravitational way. And as I've expressed in any number of times in this class, I thought I had arrived at something rather remarkable. I remember feeling that I had somehow removed myself from the Bruce experience. I was operating on some other level. And I remember saying to Blanche on the first night that I returned from this organization where I was surrounded by awakened people. And I said to her, I'm going to love you more than Bruce ever did. It was really how I felt. And I have to say, in the 11 years that have followed, that has become true. But I've also said in this class, and any number of times, that it was a realization for me that I had awakened or graduated, if you will, from kindergarten to first grade. This was not a doctorate. This was just the beginning of a movement. And I had heard that Adyashanti said, who's a wonderful awakened being, that it takes 10 years for it to really come in. You know, I'm slow, so it's 11 years. But it was really interesting to me that in this 2-week period following my operation on my lower spine and the recovery process, which is painful, full of drugs, which I'll have to acknowledge, and has kind of potency and teacherly quality to it, because when you are under the influence of pain and limited by it, it changes perspectives. And if you are practiced at all in your spiritual life, it gives you an opportunity to focus very dramatically. Part of what I had to do every day is walk around my house. That part of the instruction from the surgeon was 5-minute walk every hour. And my house is, in a strange way, circular. You can make an easy circle through the house. Strangely, and perhaps more importantly, every space in this house, in ways I have never understood since we moved here or anywhere else I've ever lived, but in this house, every step introduces me to a part of my journey in this world that is heart-opening and beautiful. From walking into the sunroom and seeing these huge windows that make you as much outside as you are inside, and the sunlight on the trees and the hills. And then I turn left and there's the dining table, and outside is the pond. And then I walk by the dining table and I walk into the living room, and it's so cozy, in the kitchen and the vaulted ceilings. And I turn right and I go into the hallway, and the hallway is lifting with light. There's 2 stories and light pours in from the top, and there's a wedding invitation on the wall and Blanche to the right. And then I walk into the library, and the library is full of all of these books that are wonderful. And in front of them are pictures of my family and grandchildren, and my heart opens up to that. And then there's the dark passageway through the mudroom, which, you know, reminds me that there are dark passages in the world. And then I walk into the kitchen, and often Blanche is there, but there's always light on, and it's full of light, and you look outside and you see the forest outside the window, and you see the porch and all the furniture that you can sit on and be outside in such comfort. And then back into the sunroom, and all of that's the journey. And I do it over and over. And as I do the journey, it is exquisitely satisfying, except one day I was on the journey And I will tell you, it was predicated by lying in my chair and listening to Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, which Susan Frost had suggested that I would do, not that symphony, but a symphony. And I have never been more aware of the blank page producing sound, notes for sound, and emotion that rises out of sound and collective sound, and the brilliance of people who create the dynamics of something the equivalent of the Fifth Symphony. And every note was like revelational to me. I was watching the unmanifested turn into notes on a page and then break into sound. And it filled me with so much joy, I was not able to contain it. And then I got up and started walking on my walk through the house, which is another layer of joy. And then something else happened. I can only describe it as the first flower emerged in my life. That out of all of the life that I've lived and all of the journey, and the last 10 years particularly, have been described in some ways as someone coming out of a cocoon, especially astrologically at this moment. But what really the experience for me was a flower appearing. I was flowering. And that flower was aware of being manifest and unmanifest simultaneously. I was aware that I was filled with the absolute truth of being and beauty and love and joy, and I was manifesting in the world. And not only was the flower arriving, or the petal of the flower arriving, I was aware that I was a bush. And there were a lot of flowers getting ready to bloom. And they were coming out of these tight pods. So they were still tight and not ready to really expose themselves, but they will flower and continue to flower. And I was informed that that's what would be happening. And I was profoundly aware that I am, and more importantly, we are all flowering forms that, given the time, the space, and the willingness to root into the depth of us, the plant takes its time to grow, and then the leaf, the first flower petal emerges, and we go. Because the miracle of the unmanifested becoming manifest is happening every instant of our life. We are always in a state of recognition of being one with something that is so extraordinary. And when the first petal came, it was like absolute direct perception that every molecule of every form of every creation was an expression of God, but not just an expression from a distance. It was permeated with the absolute immersion of connection to oneness with presence of what I call, many of us call, God. We are not for 1/billionth of a second separate from it. Not for a second. An awakening is really the absolute knowing, the absolute connectivity to the truth of that. And if you don't feel it, and trust me, the petals fall off. You don't, there are periods where you don't feel it. But it does not mean it's not true. And all that has to happen is the depth of the root system has to create the structure of the plant that manifests in this world, and through the experience of living, this thing can announce itself to you. If it does not announce itself to you, it does not mean you are imperfect or behind the times or not yet ready for something. There's no truth to that. The truth is, and this is the hardest part, you are at this very instant a living, breathing expression of God's presence in the universe. You are that. And if you don't feel that, you can. You can feel it by simple things. One, the meditative act of going inside these spaces that are all there, programmed inside you, entry points, forehead, third eye, throat, heart, navel, sex, upper chakra, base of the spine. These are the centers. You can actually gain access to them. You just sit quietly and you do these work. Ask for help to surrender and go within. You can go deeper and deeper, and you will touch feelings of joy, simplicity, comfort, and they are, in a way, the harbingers of God's grace. It's already there. It's already in you. It's not something that is waiting to happen. It's not something you earn or deserve. It is something you are, and you are right now. The one thing that seems to get in the way of that real perception is the mind. Thinking, the separate thing, the thing that separates us from that. In a way, we're programmed for that, so we can function in the manifested state. We have to develop a sense of I in order to work and do the work of this greater good in the world. And we all know from our experience that that I can be compromised. It becomes compromised by forgetting it's connected to the self. So that's one of the reasons to make this journey inward, to reconnect to the self, and then bring that awareness into day-to-day functioning. If you bring that into day-to-day functioning, interesting things will happen. The basic directive for bringing it into day-to-day functioning is at the core of all religious teaching: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And that really means, and I know you've heard me say this week by week, be a good person, be kind to others, be kind to yourself, be nice. I know it sounds absurd because it's so simplistic, but it's the core teaching. Just be kind, thoughtful of another. Put others before yourself where possible. This guy at the supermarket the other day who just said, "Hi, how you doing?" I didn't know him. Sweet and loving as can be. He reminded me of the guy at the gas station when we first moved here, who I was trying to load my air into my tire and failing because I'm not good at those things. And he came over and he said, "You know, your tire is really blown. You need to put on another tire." And I had a spare in the back, and he put it on for me. And he drove away. And I, to this day, haven't forgotten that unbelievable, unexpected kindness. That's what's wanted. We're not all able to put tires in other people's cars, but there are things we can do, and there are things we can do well. And there are things we can do cheaply and that don't have effect. I want to talk for a moment about, it seems like a change of subject, but it's not, about reaching out to people who are sick and in pain. When there are others who are suffering in the world, and I have gone through this operation, so I've been in a place of, in a way, neediness, certainly gratitude for people reaching out. Let me talk about reaching out, and I don't mean this to be a criticism, but I think it's an instruction that's really important. The cheap and easy and dirty way is thinking of you and praying for you on email. Oh, good. And often, the amount of prayer and thinking is limited to the time it took to type the email. Praying for you. What does it mean to pray for somebody? What does it mean to care enough to really express what you feel. So let me tell you what happened. Someone actually sent me flowers and a little teddy bear. A little note about praying for you and caring for you. It's very odd to think that the flowers and the teddy bear were so much more substantial than the emails I was getting. It lasted in the house. They sat there for a week. The teddy bear remains. And the quality of their prayer and good wishes were manifested physically in form that actually resided in the presence of my space. They spoke to me and they said something really important. There's a big distance between sending love and prayers and sending love and prayers and a basket. I'm not saying you need to do that, but what I'm trying to get at is that the quick and easy version of thinking of you, praying for you, is not, it's better than nothing, but it's not far from nothing. And what would touch me deeply was notes that really were more than that, that were personal, that had authentic aspect, that came from the person rather than the tribal thinking of you, sending prayers. A personal note is really important, isn't it? I mean, even on email, when you felt the person in the note, you felt that they were giving something rather than just holding something. And as spiritual students trying to go deeper in our lives, it is important to recognize that prayer is a real commodity. It's a real thing. You can actually sit and feel a prayer for another human being. It's very much like Shakti. You feel the person and you literally send love into the void and into the space that they inhabit. You can do that. And there are people out there who are and have done that. And I feel, I don't always have the name attached, but I feel the love coming. And the love that came from people was healing and substantial and wonderful. And I am grateful for it. But I spent a long time sitting by my pond going, what really is prayer? And how simple-minded we are about it. How easily we give ourselves credit for prayer when it's nothing but a kind of mindful event that takes place and disappears. Oh, I really hope someone gets better. Oh, I really think I really wish them well. And what I'm trying to get at, other than wishing people well and being sick, is what it takes to be one with manifestation, arriving from the holiest of places and realizing that we are at any given moment a manifestation of holiness, not of quick answers and quick prayers and quick hellos, manifestation of what is. And when you start to touch that this manifestation of what is you, this thing flows out of you. You can't help it. You are not in charge of it. It really happens. And you want to give and be part of manifested love and kindness and goodness in the world. It's like saying, can I go shopping for you and get you anything? Pretty good. Going shopping and getting something for someone, it's a whole other level. And living a life of compassion and care and service has to graduate to this place where you do not fight and obstruct the need of others and the need to serve others by thinking wishing them well, sending a little email takes care of it. It's not enough. Action should follow, or at least something that is authentic, personal, and meaningful. It may be more like a phone call. I don't want to try to give you a list because I can't tell you exactly what that is, but not getting stuff, not having people pay attention when you're needy and pain is sad. And of course, I experienced that, and I have been guilty of it as well. So this has been a very instructive time for me in looking at what it means to serve others. And it seems that teaching that I am expressing in this time and space has everything to do with kindness, goodness, and do unto others. That seems to be the essence, but it's not the passive version, it's the active version. Give yourself over to service in any simple way you can. You don't have to get in, you don't have to get in a group, you don't have to do anything. I mean, you can. I mean, nothing wrong with that. In many ways, wonderful. But you have to be a little bit careful in not serving the universe or serving other people to make you feel more like a better person. When it comes back to you and builds more egoistic identity, then you actually have a problem. Then it's building a character that still needs to be broken down. What's wanted is called selfless service. Selfless. Nothing comes back except that everything comes back. You will walk around your house the way I did, and you will feel you are witnessing and one with creation itself. You will start to experience the enormity of what it means to be God in the world, because that's what you are. That is what you are. Not to know that is a deep limitation. The flowering of spiritual life is recognizing who you are, what you are, and being that, just being that. Doing flows from it, but doing is not the core. Being is the core. Be God in the world. That's why we're here. And make it as manifested as possible. Don't try to get away with little tiny blips of consciousness. Be God in the world. Do for others. Feel for others. Present to others. Be available in some really foundational way. This is our mission. It's why we're born, really. And the tragedy of human life is the people who don't know that, which is, you can see millions and millions and millions of people who don't know that. It's very easy to get lost in the me and the I, and the need for the me and the I, and the mind and the brain, and the, what about my life, and all that stuff. Not only is it easy, it's pervasive, and we unfortunately live in a world that is facing enormous suffering because so few people understand the true dictate of their own spiritual religious background. Christ just said, "Do unto others as you would have them do." Buddha came out from under the bo tree and said, "Be good, be kind." Dalai Lama teaches that. So nothing here is being new. Nothing here is different than stuff you've heard before. But the practice is doing it, and the revelation is it's happening in spite of you doing it. And that's the most remarkable. And you suddenly wake up to the fact that you are flowering, that you are the very source of being in the world. And you are. You are. I'm not telling you this as you can become this, and this may happen someday. You are that. And all you have to do is walk around your house enough times. Something has to happen, and you just go. And the revelation of that, I'm telling you, it may not be a permanent thing. I see it evaporate, but it doesn't disappear. I mean, the absolute announcement of it is so massive and so completing in every way, that even having it go away is not a loss. This is the second time in a year that I've had an operation where enormous pain has arrived. I do not understand why pain is such an amazing teacher, but in both instances, it has opened my heart to greater and greater presence. I think that's what it does. I don't want pain for people, and yet if it brings you into alignment, if it brings you into availability to compassion for others, into gratitude for every moment that's not pain, that brings you into an ability to love your life as it is, then don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. You know, God is in everything. I do not understand most of it. I cannot walk around claiming knowledge. I have some basic sense of the wisdom of knowing who I am. And it's who we are. And I can only tell you that that discovery, that awakening, that transcendental experience, that enlightenment is at the core of why we're here. We become much more available to and foundational to God's purpose if we're aware of it in our lives. So I just wanted to document that the first petal has emerged. It's already fallen off, but it doesn't matter. You know, if others are there, I feel the plant, I feel the others are waiting. And to whatever degree I can give off an aroma, like a place for bees or whatever it is that come and take away the nectar, I am happy to do it. You know, you really understand mortality when you go through something like this and limitation. One has no idea how long one will be there. But thanks to YouTube, they present me with stuff because they know me better than I do. So YouTube opens all these doors, and it opened me to a talk that I gave 5 years ago, which had a lot of followers. I was shocked by it, but I decided to listen to it a little bit, and I realized I'm not saying anything now that I didn't say then. It's just more refined in a way. There are a lot of talks. There's a lot of that stuff out there available from me and others. Open yourself up to the teaching, do the work, allow it to permeate, and allow yourselves to arrive at the space you have been born to inhabit. And it just so happens you're all over there. Okay. Any questions from anybody? Comments, criticisms? George, was that a wave?
Yeah, I just wanted to reflect on a photograph of an 18th century Nepalese chakra painting I have. And all the chakras and the secondary chakras are flowers that are opening. So that sort of relates to what you're saying in a sense.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the flower image was not made up.
Yeah.
I literally felt like a flower, and I literally felt the petal or petals open.
I'm going to bring this over for 2 seconds so you can see this again. I think I showed it to you.
Okay, thank you. I worry when I teach like this that it separates me from all of you, and you go, oh, he has it and I don't. And I don't know how to get past that because it's not true. If you can be open to what I'm teaching, you are that as well. Oh, that's beautiful, George. Yeah.
It's all connected.
You know, I know flowering is a wonderful image. You know, Anne spoke to me a lot about the cocoon and the butterfly emerging, which in the end, if that's still happening, I don't know, but I do know I felt much more flowering than I did butterfly. Maybe because I feel so rooted and I don't feel like I'm off in the air at all. I feel like I'm in the air, but not disconnected from the ground. And we're all connected to the ground as long as we're here. And I also feel that because Blanche has these amazing plants around the house that gain flowers and lose flowers, that the image of it, the caretaking of it is so powerful. And Blanche is such an amazing caretaker of her plants and me. And so I'm aware of flowering because I see it everywhere. These hibiscus that just have, 20 blooms at a time, and you just look at it and go, oh my God, and they're just so beautiful. And I get what that feeling is, and I get that is a much better metaphor for the awakening to the world, the shining, breaking into the world to bring beauty to the world, but also to witness the world in a way that you might not have if you were caught up in being something ready to bloom. But that's tight and heavy. The opening, the flowering is light and beautiful. Anyway, this is a lot for that metaphor, but it's worth understanding, and I share it with you because when it happens to you, I may not be around, and you may be able to then say, "Oh yeah, that's what you said," and that's great. That would be great. So, okay, I get the feeling we're low on questions, so I love you guys. Thank you for being here. I will try to keep this going. Recovery is a very odd recovery, good moments and bad, but it definitely inspires me to talk from the front lines of being wounded and yet grateful for every breath of life. So thank you. Stay well. I'll see some of you soon, sooner than later.